Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of Family by Design. Listen, I go into a really sensitive subject here, but it's really, really important. And the topic that we talk about is really a question, which is my son a pervert? And people may not ask that question quite like that, but sometimes they don't know what to do, and especially parents that have boys. You have to realize that your boys have a sex drive and then that God created, but it's what do you do with it? And so in this episode, Liz and I are going to help you be able to navigate some of those things with men and boys, and you're really, really going to have some understanding, and I believe you'll be blessed because of it. Okay, so this is a very interesting topic we're going to talk about, and the way we're going to phrase it is going to be a little shocking, but we like shock value here.
We do like shock
value is good. The question is my son a pervert?
That's a good question.
I don't know that it's a good question, but there's a reason why we're asking
Right.
it. And the question would come more from a mom than it would from a dad.
Gotcha.
And I think this is really important for mothers to understand that, I mean, your son could be perverted. Because he's off into things he shouldn't be. And we're talking about the sexuality of a teenage boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just men in general.
Men, yeah.
From the time men, even before they hit puberty, they are drawn to look at a woman who's beautiful. I can remember when, and it starts very innocent.
Right.
And there's a reason we're going into this whole thing, because people don't know how to handle their children, specifically their sons' sexuality.
That's right.
But let's be real here. God made us as sexual creatures.
That's right.
He made us that way.
Right.
Let's understand it. So I can remember a time when Kingston was about 3 or 4 years old. And he went with my mom. Actually, he went with my dad to my mom's work to eat lunch. And apparently they had hired at her work, they had hired this younger girl. She was like, in her 20s and was beautiful. I never saw her or met her or anything. But when they brought Kingston up there, Kingston sat across the table and with his head on his knuckles like that, and like tilted his head and just batted his eyes at her. He's like 3-4 years old, way before puberty. It wasn't sexual. Right. I mean, he didn't even have a concept of that. But yet there was still a draw for a male to look at a female as being attractive. Right. That is embedded by the Lord. That's not evil. There's nothing wrong with that. And so the problem is that we've not been knowledgeable, and the ignorance has left people in darkness about the sexuality of men. Right. And now the enemy, of course, I mean, sex is everywhere. It's on every commercial, everywhere. Like recently, we started because of certain ways we'll watch shows. We'll end up seeing some commercials. Like, we haven't had TV for a lot of years, but they'll throw commercials in these.
They're calling them ads now.
Ads, right. And the things that they put on them are like
insane.
Unbelievable. And so, the saying goes that sex sells, and so it's everywhere. And so the enemy has really capitalized on that. But the church as a whole has, I think, been very ignorant concerning sexuality of men. And so moms in particular, women don't even understand their husband's sexuality.
It's true.
And a lot of men don't understand their sexuality. But women don't, and they definitely don't understand their boys. Because a woman didn't grow up as a boy. She grew up, was a girl and then became a woman. So they don't get men. Men are, now, anybody listening to this, you need to let me finish this before you turn it off, okay?
Right.
Men are designed by God to look at a woman, desire her, and we're talking post-puberty. But it does start innocent. It starts with, wow, she's very beautiful. There's something in a man to look at a woman and say she's beautiful.
Right.
And there's nothing, I mean, you can't help but noticing if a woman is beautiful.
Even women notice other beautiful women.
Right. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with that. But post puberty, it is embedded by God to look upon, I'll say the woman, all right? Not a bunch of women. The woman in the confines of marriage, desire her and partake of her.
Right.
Flat out. And people, they could think, oh, it's animal instinct of you to say that or whatever. No, it's a sex drive that's in men.
That's right.
It's how he designed us. He designed us to look at a woman, desire her, and go after her.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. I think that's key, to say there isn't anything wrong with that. And actually, when you break it apart like that, is a wonderful and beautiful thing when it has the proper boundaries.
Yeah. So, because we live in a real world, and we've had to minister to a lot of different parents, over the years, and we raise our own sons, and our sons are doing great, whatever. But we still have walked through, hormonal things, and just because we know where they're at,
right,
and been able to speak to them. And I'm certainly we haven't led in all of that perfectly, but we don't add shame to sex.
Right.
And it's part of the reason that I'll act very PG-13 in our home. With PG-13 is extreme, but it's nothing for me to say hot like your mama. Like, I'm fine with expressing that I'm attracted to you. They need to know it's fine to be attracted to a woman. That shouldn't be a shameful thing.
Right.
It's how you carry that's so important.
Right.
It's incredibly important. So what's happened is that we have fathers that are absent. We have homes largely that are being raised, the boys are being raised by mothers. Right. They're completely clueless. And then where the fathers are there, most fathers men are, because they don't understand sexuality properly. They don't understand women, and they don't understand God's view on sex. They are they're stuck in sin themselves.
Right. There's so much shame.
Nobody knows what to do. And the amount of shame that men deal with is off the chain. I mean, it's an unbelievable amount. And so then you have these boys being raised to not understand women at all. I mean, I can't say I really understand women. They're still a mystery. But, you learn some things. But they don't understand how they're wired. Right. And so then when they start having desires and look at women, and then if they get into, pornography and things like that, obviously that stuff is wrong. And they get into those kind of things, they have, instead of saying, hey, I need help with this, right, they are automatically brought into shame because it's never talked about. Right. No one has ever helped them see, hey, you're growing, and you're going to see some changes in your body, and you're going to start to notice changes in girls. Right. You're going to start to notice their bodies. Now let me help you be able to conduct your vessel with honor. But instead, it's like, and we use an extreme term like, is my son a pervert? Right. Most people probably aren't saying that, but they've thought that. Well, and we've had questions posed to us that make us realize, wow, they think their son's off. They don't realize he just has hormones that are unchecked and untrained, and he doesn't know what to do with his eyes. Right. Or his mind.
Right. It's so true. And I think maybe another way you could say that is like, as a mom too, like, boys are gross, or what the heck? Like, I don't understand. And because I don't understand, I don't feel confident in having any kind of conversation. And then some even good moms are scrambling to like find a good resource for their child or for themselves, because they're like, I don't know if I need to understand, but I don't understand, but I don't know how to help them. And so instead of, doing anything, everybody just stays silent. And I think in this place of silence, then shame breeds, and then things remain hidden. And then, it just goes to this really bad, dark place so quickly. And this is, like across the board, like you're saying, not just with mothers and sons, but also wives with their husbands. Things are kept in secret and quiet or not talked about because nobody knows how to even talk about it. Nobody knows that it is okay to talk about it. And then they're scared to ask the questions. Yeah. And so really asking questions, seeking for understanding is important. I can remember I was on a walk, and I have to say, like, I fell into the category of, I don't understand this. I don't want to understand this. Guys are gross, and I don't even get it. I don't get it. Like, just...
That was what you thought. It wasn't an understanding.
Right.
That was just the way you thought.
That was the way I thought. Yeah. And I can remember I was walking the dog, and the Lord spoke to me, and he said, you cannot remain naive. Yeah. You have 4 boys. And I was like, I'm naive here? And it was like in that moment, blinders came off. And maybe just like another level of compassion or like a seeking to understand for truth began to come into my heart. And so instead of it being a gross or a shameful thing, like I'm like, I have opportunity here that I can help my boys become men. I can help to understand. Yes. I can help lead things. I can choose at this point to remain silent and naive and act like it's not happening, or I can begin to see the realities that are faced, our boys are facing, our men are facing, and I can start to seek to understand. Because most of the time there's, roots to fruit, and oftentimes
there always is.
Right, we're judging the fruit, and we're not liking the fruit, but we're unwilling to be able to see, people as people and look for the root cause.
And when it comes to this issue of sex and men, there's both normal, natural things that God made and perversion mixed in there. Right. Because again, you go back to the basis of this. God made men the way that He did, and He said it's good. When He created us, He said it's good. He made Adam to desire, at least definitely after He made Eve. Right. Adam had a desire in him for his wife, and it wasn't perverted at all. Right. And I guarantee you, He looked at her, and that's why she was called woman.
Whoa,
he said,
man.
Whoa, man, baby. Yeah. And so I guarantee you, he liked what he saw. And so God made him that way. And if we don't understand that, then what happens is that when, a child gets caught with pornography, or they, act the way that they do. I mean, teenage boys, man, I remember, quote, locker room talk and stuff when I was younger. I didn't really participate with it heavily, but I listened to it, and I definitely probably participated a little bit. Like, bam, that girl's fine, man. Look, and I could go into a lot of stuff that I didn't say, but I heard a lot of stuff said. Right. And the basis of that was that there was a desire for the beautiful girl, the beautiful woman, whatever, and that basis that's there is not bad. But the problem is that when it's not taught that God made you that way, then you start to think there's something wrong with me. And then shame comes in, and then nobody knows what to do with it. Right. What needs to be taught is, son, God made you that way. It's totally fine for you to have hormones. It's totally fine for you to see a woman and think, wow, she's beautiful.
And at this point, we need to celebrate the fact that, our boys are looking at women or girls. I mean, seeing that they're beautiful and desiring them, because that is right. Right. And that needs to be celebrated. I'm thankful that you like girls. Okay. Yeah. Now, let me tell you how to, and why you have this sex drive, why desire is good, but how to keep it within boundaries. Yeah. And then begin the conversation. Because if we're unwilling to have these conversations, the world is having the conversation. Oh, yeah. It is. We cannot, you cannot avoid it. Listen, sex is everywhere.
Here's the thing, is that you could take out all of the perversion of the world, and you could have, you could have two families, say, grow up, not biological, all right? And you have a boy and a girl child, and you could grow them up together. And let's say they're living out in the middle of nowhere where they have no technology, they have nothing, and everybody dresses their girls, up to their neck and
super modest.
It's as modest as you can be. If you have that boy and that girl, they grow up together, at some point they're going to end up being attracted to each other.
Right.
Without any of the perversion of the world that's there. Why? Because God made men and women to be attracted to each other. Now, women are attracted, generally speaking, are attracted to men for different reasons.
Right.
Like, and guys don't get this. Like, they think that landing a wife is because they have a great body or whatever. I mean, I'm certain that none of that stuff really hurts. But and if you land a wife because you have a great body, then I guarantee you have a very shallow wife. Because what women really want is they want to be loved, they want to be cared for, they want to be secure, they want a confident man who's confident, which I don't even know. I was so unconfident, I don't even know how I landed you. It was by the grace of God. But they that's what women desire. That's the thing God put in women, to long for that in a husband, not to have a beach body, right? I mean, that's not really the thing. And so, but then also this goes into so much conversation because even though men are very attracted to women physically, if they're not approaching their wives properly, their wives could end up thinking that they're not good enough, or they're not lovely enough, or they're not whatever.
Right.
And, it's not all about physical appearance. As a matter of fact, a lot of the attraction that's there as you grow older, it has less to do with the person on the outside and more to do with the person on the inside.
Right.
It really, truly does. I think you're physically very beautiful.
Thank
but
you.
I love who you are more than how you look. That's not to say that I like those nappy pajamas that you wear. Let's just be honest. There's a set of pajamas.
You had to bring that up.
I feel that it's gone to that level that we need counsel. we need help. So we're going to need counsel after the fact that I just mentioned that.
Very comfortable.
You talk about frumpy
pajamas.
They are frumpy. Even your children agree with it.
I know, but they're so warm.
So you're not always there for my viewing pleasure.
Wow. Remember that when I put them on tonight.
At least they don't cover your beautiful face.
I can work on that. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, let's move on from my frumpy pajamas.
Let's. But going back to the point of this whole conversation is we have to understand men, understand how God made men, but then help men conduct their vessels with honor. Boys look at pornography because nobody told them and showed them how to conduct their eyes and how to deal with their mind and their thoughts.
Right.
The fact that they want to look is not evil.
Right.
The fact that they are looking is, but the fact that they want to was put there by God.
Right. And
that's revelatory.
That is, yeah.
It is. Because if you tell a boy, like, how dare you, I can't believe you're doing that, oh my gosh, what are you doing, blah, and you react to it, you have shamed them to the core of their sexuality.
Right.
You cannot do that.
They're going to hide.
Can't do that. They're going to hide more. They're going to probably end up in more perversion. At the very least, just live in shame and never be the free people that God wanted them to be.
Right.
We live in a fallen world where, and this is an excuse to watch and do things that we shouldn't, but we live in a fallen world. Sex is everywhere. Your children, especially your young men, they're going to be exposed to sex.
Right.
They're going to, at the very least, if you have the most perfect home that there is, at the very least, they're going to walk down the street somewhere, sometime, and they're going to see a woman that is not dressed appropriately, and they're going to be like, oh my gosh. And it's not because they're a pervert.
Right.
It's because they're a man.
Right.
But they need someone to say,
let's talk about this.
Yes, she's attractive, and it's fine that you noticed, but it's bad if you drive around the block to take another look.
Right.
Like, that's the problem. Like, you can notice, like, wow, she's a beautiful woman, but it's when you take another trip in your mind of like, wow, she's very beautiful. Wow. I wonder what it would be like to go on a date with her.
And then it keeps progressing.
And then it progresses before you know it. You find yourself in a really bad place. And so men have to be taught. Men need to be taught this. But it's really best when they're young boys to begin. Like, if a boy notices that a girl's pretty, or even when they're 10 or 11 or 12, and they're like, oh, I think she's cute, or they find out, like, you find out that, they're having all these little secret talks or whatever, and I think that she's cute, and I think that he's cute, and I'm like, oh, don't shame that. Direct it.
That's so good.
Like, you're right. She is a cute girl. She's very, very pretty. And I can see why you would think that you're attracted to her. But you know what? I want to wait till you get older. Because God, if it's not her, God's got somebody special for you. And that's good that you, like, you know what I'm saying? You go to that place with them.
That's powerful. So can you just give us like a couple tips on like how, well, I love that you just gave us an example of redirecting a conversation, but quickly, like, what does it mean? What do you mean when you're saying conduct your vessel with honor? And what are some practical ways that dads, that moms, that who can ever help their sons, help the young men in their life to be able to conduct their vessel with honor?
Very practically, you need to help your children understand biological makeup.
Right.
I mean, very practically, like they get that, boys got different parts than girls. Like they get to know that pretty quickly, right? But you need to help them understand why they have different parts and why they're attracted. And I mean, and it was one of the most uncomfortable conversations, but I'm glad I had it, and I'm getting ready to have more of the conversations.
Right.
With some of the other ones. But I literally took two of the boys, the two oldest one at one point, I brought them in my office and I drew a picture. It was stick figures of a picture of a naked man and a naked woman. I mean, it was stick figures. And I said, and I drew the parts on the woman. I drew two boobs, and I draw breasts, or the proper term. I actually thought they were called boobs. That's what we called them growing up. They're called breasts. You need to call them the proper name, because when you're like the hoo-hoo and the wee-wee, like you're adding shame to it. Just call it what it is. So I drew a picture of a woman with breasts and a vagina.
Yes.
And I said, this is some kind of a form of a woman, but you get where I'm going at here. And I drew a picture of a man.
Yeah.
And I said, when his eyes look at this part or these parts, this is what happens to his part. I mean, you asked me for how to do this.
It's right.
This is a way. I'm not saying it's the way. I probably could have been. I mean, they were dreadfully embarrassed. And I was also embarrassed on the inside, but I thought, no, I'm the man. I'm going to talk about this stuff. And they need to hear from me. It's fine that that's the reaction. You just need to make sure that you keep your eyes off of there until you have your wife, and then your wife is a treasure to you, and you can enjoy her when you get married.
Right.
All the clothes can come off, and everything is, fine. You let the Lord direct you and all that stuff, fine, right? But if they don't hear that, they won't know what to do. So what happens with boys, I'm going to get real here for a second.
Okay.
What happens with boys is that when they see with their eyes, God made them to do that. And they imagine in their heart and in their mind, God made them to do that.
Right.
Then they will act. But when it's outside of marriage, it's not blessed.
Right.
And they will, and of course, nowadays pornography is so rampant that they will end up looking, and eventually they'll put action to it, and then they'll get into masturbation, and then they won't get free from it.
Right.
They'll have a hard time getting free from it.
And then there's more and more shame.
There's more shame. What do I do with this?
Right, we're not talking about it.
And then they carry
yeah.
the perversion of all that into their marriage, and it's a struggle in their marriage.
Right.
And it was because somebody needed to help them understand, you have a vessel that God has given you, and it is a sexual vessel, and you need to learn to conduct it with honor.
Right.
You're not a pervert for thinking a woman's beautiful. You're not a pervert for wanting to have sex with a woman.
Right.
Praise God. Let's applaud that. You want to have sex? Wonderful. Wait till you're married.
Right. Because
you're going to be blessed in it.
Right. Because sex is not bad. It's just not blessed outside of
That's right.
marriage. And so that is something they need to know also. And I think too, like you even being willing to have the conversation, it opened the door for truth.
Yeah.
It showed that you had a willingness to have talks about sexuality, about sexual things. You ridded all shame there. So it leaves a space and a place for them to come back and say, I'm dealing with this, or I need help here, or what are your thoughts about this? Or because they're going to come to you because they know that you're willing.
Hopefully, but at least they would come to somebody.
Right.
Yes.
To have a talk about this because there isn't shame involved.
Yeah.
And so I think this is no more. Don't be naive and stop saying that your son or the men in your life are perverted, and start.
They might be into perversion. But they are not perverted.
That's right. And just see the work of the enemy in their life. Have compassion and start being able to ask the Lord to seek to understand without being naive on how we can combat the culture that we're in to bring truth.
Yeah.
And no more perversion and just sexuality. I think that's important.
Yeah. Amen. Good stuff. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Family by Design. I pray that you were blessed as you listen to the word of the Lord for your life today. I want to encourage you to go on and leave us a review and a 5-star rating. If this ministry is blessing you, go to our website at www.wartmen.org. There you can find more resources, and you can also consider partnering with this ministry. If you like what we're doing, we just pray that you would at least join us in prayer and consider supporting us financially as we take the gospel deep into the hearts of people. Gospel preached, hearts awakened, and nations reformed.